Let us now specify the calculation of the mean decrease in impurity, MDI, within a tree. Let us take this tree already constructed. The partition associated with this tree is on the left, the structure of the tree on the right. Let's calculate the MDI of the variable x1 for this tree. We proceed as follows, starting by identifying all the cuts of the tree that are made according to the variable x1. For this tree, 2 cuts are made according to x1. They appear in blue on the partition. We then compute the decrease in impurity associated with each of these cuts. First, the first cut according to x1, shown here in blue. Then the second cut according to the variable x1, shown here in blue. From these impurity decreases, we calculate their weighted average, where each impurity decrease is weighted by the proportion of observation in the cell where the cut is made. The calculation of the MDI of variable x1 by the forest is given by the average of the MDIs of each of the trees in the forest. Intuitively, if the variable x1 has never been used in any tree of the forest, the MDI is 0. Indeed, the value of the variable x1 does not intervene in the prediction process and therefore has a 0 importance calculated via the MDI. Conversely, if the MDI of the variable x1 is high, it means that the cuts according to this variable have led to a significant decrease of the impurity, which means that the use of this variable has allowed to simplify the supervised learning problem by creating homogeneous cells, i.e. adapted to the learning problem. This measure is easily accessible in scikit-learn thanks to the feature importances attribute of the random forest regressor or random forest classifier objects. It is therefore easy to use. Moreover, it is not necessary to retrain the random forest to have access to this measure. The MDI is particularly adapted to the construction of the trees because it is based on the decreases of impurities within the cells of the tree, which correspond to the splitting criterion used to construct the trees. In particular, one would not be able to compute the impurity decrease for least squares method, as MDI is specific to decision trees. Unfortunately, the MDI has flaws. It is known to be biased toward variables that have many categories, very frequent categories, or that are highly correlated. An additional bias is due to using the same sample to build the forest and to calculate the importance of the variables. In general, in machine learning, it is imperative to split the dataset into a training set used to build the estimator and a test set used to evaluate the quantities, usually 0, related to the estimator. Similarly, we should build our trees on part of the dataset and compute the MDI on other data, which is not done by default. Another bias is due to the use of fully developed trees in the calculation of the MDI. Such an MDI does not only take into account the true relationship between the input and output variables, but also incorporates model noise, which leads to a poor estimation of the importances and potentially to a poor ranking of the input variables. Finally, there is no information available about the quantities that the MDI is supposed to estimate. Remember that the importance of the variables is not relevant as such and depends only on the question one is asking, typically variable selection or link identification. We do not know if and toward which quantity the MDI converges to as the size of the data increases, which means we do not know what problems the MDI can be used for. These are current research questions on this indicator.